All right, it's 1 o'clock and we will call this meeting back to order. Do we need to do a roll call for this, you think?
Here.
Commissioner Schroeder,
Here.
Commissioner McDaniel.
Here, thank you. All right, the item on the agenda is updates to the Elbert County zoning and subdivision regulations. Jennifer?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Commissioners. The item on your agenda this afternoon are regulation updates. These are updates that came from your Planning Commission. They identified a variety of updates, narrowed it down to their top priorities, and those are before you this afternoon. They opened a public hearing on June 17th, and there was one public comment provided at that time about the EDZ. An additional public comment was provided in writing, and then on July 1st, your Planning Commission did vote 9-0 to recommend approval of these updates that are before you. So I'm going to do my best to provide some amount of context and an overview, but then I'll be fairly brief, and then we can certainly dive in as much or as little as you all choose on each or all of the individual items. So the best way to probably summarize the regulation changes are that there were 4 main topics identified, as well as some pretty basic just corrections that were provided in those corresponding articles. The 4 big topics are, number 1 was elimination of the concept brief process. It was previously called the concept plan process. Number 2, from your Planning Commission, elimination of the EDZ overlay and related processes. Just for clarity, there are EDZ processes both related to the zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations. There's an EDZ site plan as well as an EDZ subdivision plat, basically. And then the 3rd change was an addition of an 18-month time frame for community meetings. And then the 4th change would be addition of a 3-year landscape warranty period. And just to provide a little bit of information, there are red lines included in the packet that sort of outline all the different places that these various changes, how they permeate through various articles. I will say that this process started back in the spring with some different staff on board, and so I will say that working with Lance, there does appear to be some different and perhaps easier and more efficient mechanisms to record and finalize changes, even how we do the resolution and things like that. So depending on your discussion and decisions today, we will make the necessary modifications to the resolutions and or the red lines or the revisions themselves, and have those be reflective of your decision and with legal review before that's recorded. So just to talk about the different changes a little bit, elimination of the concept brief process. As a reminder, this is that process that's required for PUD applications that, actually I don't even know if the word required is in there, I'd have to go back and look at it now. For PUD applications, I believe the internal policy had been 100 or more lots is kind of how that had been utilized. That was a presentation to you all by applicants that is outlined in the process, where you all could provide some early high-level feedback, but it was not a public hearing. It was not a presentation by staff or anything like that. I think you all have all sat through a presentation of a concept brief, or previously known as the concept plan. I've tried to note on these slides the major articles in which these changes would be reflective. Again, as noted, both the zoning regulations and the subdivision regulations for the concept brief process. As noted, the Planning Commission recommended just eliminating that entire process. The second and probably the biggest change that is proposed would be elimination of the EDZ overlay, or the economic development zone overlay, and the related processes. As mentioned, there are both site plan, zoning processes in relation to the EDZ as well as a subdivision process, and so those related articles are noted there. It is found throughout a number of articles. I just wanted to highlight for discussion purposes, the EDZ is noted in your land use table in the zoning regulations as its own category there, noted with an E. And just to highlight, right, let's pick an example of hazardous materials. That's a fun land use to think about. Hazardous materials, right, not allowed in any of these residential districts, allowed special use by review in commercial, special use by review in industrial, and then noted as an E in the EDZ, which means, right, that use would be allowed in the EDZ zone with an approved site plan to come through you all. I just say that to say, right, we could eliminate the EDZ entirely. That is certainly an option. Another option would be to change or maybe further tailor some of the land uses and what you are essentially incentivizing through the EDZ zone. So I just bring that up for discussion purposes only. The third regulation change would be addition of an 18-month time frame for community meetings. I think this was discussed quite a bit, perhaps with you all. I know with the Planning Commission, there have been some concerns that have come up at various hearings about sometimes the length of time from the community meeting to the public hearing, and so this is what is recommended to you all would be adding an 18-month time frame. The final change is addition of a 3-year landscape warranty period. There in Article 8 of the zoning regulations. And just to provide some clarity and discussion, again, this is in the landscaping section of Article 8, which are design guidelines. So that language would be to add that 3-year warranty period. But for context, the current, or sort of what has been called Amendment 5 regulations, the entire warranty period had been taken out. I understand that that happened, I believe, in early to mid 2024. And so you see in Amendment 5, we just have that first sentence about sort of watering, but there was not a period, a warranty period there. So again, just pointing out details for context and discussion. Again, that was extremely high level. We can certainly go into additional details as you all would like. I did not want to bore you today with going through every page of red lines, but we can do that as well. I look to you for that direction.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I'm back online now. All right, thank you. So I had questions about the EDZ, so we vote to eliminate that today. That completely removes it in the county, is that right?
That is my understanding.
Is that
You could do that.
okay? It's the only question I have. Commissioner Schroeder, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a few. All these different points, but I predominantly will have questions about the EDZ and comments on that. Did the Planning Commission give a reason for wanting to eliminate? To have that. Yeah, it's on and then it goes off. Enjoyed having that opportunity to interact and see that high level overview and give direction. And in fact, when EC East came before us with their original concept plan, we found it lacking and sent them back to the drawing board and said come back with more details. So I think there was some benefit there for both on our side of the table and the other side of the table. But I was just curious what their reasoning was for wanting to eliminate that.
I would be happy to go back and find the minutes of that discussion. I know that I have heard a couple of arguments I'd be happy to share. I want to be clear that I don't know that these are exactly what the Planning Commission's decision-making was. But I have heard some concern, well, I will say that the concept briefs don't go before the planning commission. That's just a fact. I know that there have been some discussions, at least with previous legal staff, about prejudgment of projects that would ultimately come before you all, right, and concern about that, about just depending on how that was presented. There have been some questions about the reverse side of that, which is, well, what if comments weren't provided on a particular topic that then came up later? That was also a question that had come up. But, so there's certainly room for discussion on that.
Okay, I appreciate that. I guess I'll ask our attorney then, do you think that there is legal issues with having a concept brief, is what Jennifer alluded to?
To the extent that that issue came up, it did not come from me, so I would have to look at that issue and determine if I thought that was a problem. What I just heard was there was concern about predetermination, and that is a due process issue. If any land use issue were to come before the board, and the board, any one or more members of the board had predetermined what they're going to do prior to a public hearing, that would be a due process concern. That would not be specific to a concept brief. That would be a general issue of concern. The whole idea of a public hearing is to listen to the evidence, to listen to the application, to listen to any public concerns, and then for the first time make a decision. So I guess a concept brief could be inappropriately used in that way, but I would not have a concern that the existence of a concept brief would necessarily lead to that determination.
Okay, thank you. Back to Jennifer. We had talked previously, the previous board had talked about the time period between public meetings and an application as well. So there was recognition that there's an issue there. My question is 18 months long enough? How do you make, in your experience, do you think that's a reasonable number, or should we extend it 6 months, reduce it 6 months? What do you think is a reasonable number for that?
So I think there's a question as to what your goal is, right? The community meeting, the intent is, right, it's really, I would argue, it's information sharing between an applicant and the community, and between the community and the applicant, to have those conversations early on before they even formally apply for us. So, you know, in a normal, because they're all normal, right? A normal project, 18 months is probably an appropriate time frame from when someone has a community meeting to when they get to public hearings. The question I would have for you all is there truly a benefit to, if we realize that we're trying to schedule public hearings and they're going to hit that maybe 19-month mark, does the public hearing itself serve the same purpose as having an additional community meeting at month 18 or at month 19? So I do think there is something to think about there, because at that point, the community meeting is serving a different purpose because they have already gone through the review process. And so we would be having the public hearing, right, again, which is the second opportunity to invite the public to provide comments. However, I get it. There have been some projects, right, where it probably was, 2 or maybe more years ago from that initial community meeting, and things certainly do change. So it's a little bit of a tricky one. I will say that staff does have conversations with applicants and sometimes recommend an additional community meeting, even if we can't require it, especially in instances when the project has changed significantly, right? And that certainly happens, right? They presented something in a community meeting, they've even started the formal application process, got maybe a lot of feedback in that first or second round, then decide to make significant changes. At that point, I would recommend that they do another one, but I certainly can't, as it's currently written, require a second one.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And I know we've had some in the past that have been extended past that 18 months. It really was not the fault of the applicant, from referral agencies, and they've been actively working on it, but these things just take time. And so I'm with you. I would be concerned If this is a hard cutoff and then suddenly we're on vacation or whatever and that public hearing gets put off and suddenly there's a hard deadline and then they're in trouble. So I would maybe think we ought to have a little bit more flexibility there, perhaps given the director more discretion on when to require an additional community meeting. I think we all recognize if there's a project that has significantly changed, that it probably should go before for another, and that might be after 6 months or after a year. So it might be quicker than what the 18-month deadline would be. So I'm always a fan of flexibility and authorizing our staff and trusting our staff. So perhaps there's a discussion that we could have along those lines on that. My other question is on the 3-year landscape extended warranty. And again, I'll ask you if you know why that the Planning Commission came up with that number. They just thought it was a good number, or they drew it out of a hat. I don't know how they came up with that.
I will defer to you, Commissioner Buck. I believe that this particular item maybe originated with you, sir, and you may be able to provide more context.
It did, and the reason being for that, and I have comments on all of the topics today, but we can start with that. I used to do landscaping 10 years, and some of the seasons that we have are drought. 2 years is not long enough for some of these plantings to take root. Now, having said that, I thought 3 years would be a minimum time frame, but it looks like Amendment 5 has no requirement, so it becomes obsolete. I think that is irrelevant now. Am I reading that right?
So you could certainly add it back in. I just did want to clarify that change was made. Again, I wasn't here at that time, but I understand that change was made in a revision last year to take it out. I think there was perhaps some concern about how that was enforced and by what mechanism other than the subdivision improvement agreement.
But can you put that slide back up real
Of
quick
course.
where you had it? So that's continual. So if someone has a buffering or a requirement that they provide a buffering, it's not 2 years, it's not 3 years, it's continued survival. So, could be 100 years, could be 50 years. Let's leave it at Amendment 5.
50 years.
Well, you know what I mean. It's indefinite.
water
It's-
in 50
It's survival. It's the survival of the plantings. I'm okay with as written. I don't think it's necessary to change it now. I was unaware of that Amendment 5 change.
Correct. I would agree that on the, an applicant is held to whatever their approved site plan depicts. And so that includes keeping landscaping alive and things like
So
that.
on Amendment 5, the 2-year requirement was removed.
Correct.
Okay, so then it's irrelevant.
Well, it might be. A few years ago, before I was even a commissioner, but I was involved with a lot of these meetings in a different capacity, there was a tower that was being put up and was approved east of here, and I should have done more research on that, but the CDS department required screening, and they had blue spruce, I believe, was actually designated for that to be the screening. Commissioner Buck probably knows that would take a lot of water, a lot of time to get established, and the property had no access to water. There was nothing there. So, in a short period of time, those spruce died. So, how do we make a caveat there if they're in the middle of nowhere and there's no water on the property? We're going to make them truck water out to.
Yes, we are,
Okay.
my opinion.
That to me seems pretty onerous on that.
But there's ranchers and farmers and citizens that truck water to their plantings on their property. They don't have access. I see people with water trucks on their property watering their trees. It happens in residential, it happens in commercial, it happens. It's a thing.
Well, I would find it a bit onerous if it was my tower. The other question I have, and the concern I have mostly, these other ones are minor compared to this, is the elimination of the EDZ. We've been all over the board on this. We've 2 weeks ago in our resolution that died, had limited the EDZ to 5 acre lot size. Prior to that, we had talked about 8 acre lot size, and now we've gone down to removing it altogether. We just seem to be all over the board on what the goal about this is, and I guess I don't understand what the goal is in with this, changing this. But the bottom line is this becomes another anti-business, anti-small business action that paints the county bad. It takes away the streamlined cutting of red tape, the intention of what the EDZ did, and it adds then back in all the rules and regulations that become onerous, expensive, and time-consuming to the applicant. And just for a little bit of history on this, our goal, the goal, this was put in before I was, and I agree with it, the goal was to encourage business, and it's what we need in the county, and to streamline it and make it quicker has been very successful and very advantageous. Double Beam Hay, when they were approved for their site development plan, was 32 days from application to approval. And that's because it cut a lot of red tape and was able to get right before the commissioners. This was a business that was operating already, was found to be in violation of zoning, and it was causing some traffic issues. And because of the EDZ and making an accurate site plan, it was able to become into compliance and alleviate a lot of those issues. And that should be what one of our goals here is, to assist our small businesses to come into compliance, to be able to do what they want to do within the approved regulations. And so I found that to be a very successful one. Our advanced medical device company down just east of, between Simla and Matheson, is another example of great success with the EDZ. Over 50 employees employed there, shipping their equipment all over the place, providing good paying jobs down there. From what I've heard, they're great employers. They've even got a agreement, the bus has a stop right there at their business, so the employees can bring their kids there to work and they get picked up and dropped off. There's just a lot of benefits that came there, and one of their attractions, the reason that they came to Elbert County, was because of the EDZ and the streamlined process when they were looking to move out of the metro area because of onerous regulations. And so, that's another one that's on there. We can see the Burnco, Drill Tech, all those have come in with the EDZ and are providing great services to our county, or soon will be. The site plan is different from an SUR in that it provides the entitlement to that property, and that's important for the person to have that entitlement as they go forward. One of the concerns that was brought forth the EDZ, and it still continues today, is that we have 0 vacant commercial or industrial mixed-use zoning in the county. So how can we be a county that's going to encourage a business if we have no existing zoning for any of those activities? Nothing of that sort in unincorporated Elbert County. And of course, that means when we push away business, we're pushing away a tax benefit. The commercial tax base for the property tax, if they're doing sales, the 1% sales tax that goes toward roads is suddenly gone. And even clear back in 1996, and people that have come here after that are saying we don't need economic development. But back in 1996, the comp plan called for economic development along paved corridors. The county's biggest investment is in paved roads, which we saw this morning with our audit and how much asset that is to the county. And by putting commercial business, retail business along these paved corridors, it provides us a return of investment on those projects. The other two concerns, the real concerns I have with this, is we have a economic development site plan that is scheduled to come before us on October 8th, next meeting. What a disservice to our citizen who's gone through everything that they need to go through to come to the point that they're ready to make a presentation to us, and we pull the rug out from under them the meeting before. I don't think that is fair or appropriate for us to do. The other thing that concerns me is we have denied projects, I'll be very careful how I say this, in the past based on the existence of the economic development zone. And my concern is if this goes away, that becomes an argument as against to why we denied a project. And so I'm super concerned that we don't want to endanger any future rulings based on what happens today. The EDZ might not be perfect, as everybody has their own ideas, but I would prefer to work to improve it, find out what we do want in the EDZ, what sizes, what uses that we want in there, to make it better, not just throw it away. Because there has been good things that have happened from it, but that doesn't mean it can't be improved. And so that would be my plea today.
Anything else, sir? All right. My comments on that are, is that we need to get better control of development, especially along that 86 corridor out there. But for better control over development, I feel like that EDZ needs to be removed, and it's just my opinion. But we can always come back later and look at it possibly. But right now, we need to be able to gain some control over that and not just have anything going up along that corridor or the others for that matter. And if you look at that EDZ, there's a lot of different types of businesses that can go in that maybe we need to rethink on that. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents. Commissioner Buck.
Yeah, I got a lot of comments, and if you guys want to start with the EDZ zone, that's fine. I was hoping that we'd take one topic, knock it all out, and take the next one, knock it out, and the next one, but we're just going to do it all in a bunch here. As far as the EDZ zone is concerned, there is some plus and minuses to it. There's some businesses that we want to encourage, but there's also businesses, do we want to really encourage them? We're not saying, let's say we got rid of it or we modified it. There's certain types of business. I think hazardous materials was brought up. Do we want to encourage hazardous material sites? Probably not. Could we still allow them? Sure, we could, but they would have to go through the proper channels and not through a streamlined process of being an EDZ project. So what that does, being in the EDZ zone, it eliminates a community meeting. It also eliminates any input from the Planning Commission. Comes right to the Board of County Commissioners. we have residential properties in that EDZ zone. So for example, and the page is Article 5, pages 3 through 6. We have, what, 100 some uses that are allowed? I didn't count them. It looks like anything goes in that EDZ zone. It's a catch-all. It was a desperate attempt to attract businesses. We can be selective. We can choose what businesses we want to encourage, and we can make the rest of the businesses that we don't want to necessarily encourage, just make them go through the proper channels, and you can still have a community meeting if someone wants to put in a firing range. Right? That could be next to somebody's house, and you're saying you're not going to have a community meeting if you're going to put a firing range next to my house? I think it's disingenuous. I think it's unfair to any citizens that live near the EDZ zone. Now, I'm going to kind of throw you guys for a loop here real quick because I'm going to agree with Dallas. I know that
Impossible.
now, having said that, there is ways to improve it, and we can make it work for everybody. I think we go through line by line, not today, but we go through line by line, use by use, and we decide what type of businesses do we want to encourage. Medical facility, you betcha. Urgent care, you betcha. Get them through as fast as we can. Leave them in an EDZ zone. What type of businesses do we want to attract? Commercial business? Perhaps, right? Good tax revenue from a commercial business along the EDZ zone. But do we need more storage units? I don't know if we do. Right? So if you look at those, like I said, they're on Article 5, page 3 through 6, and just kind of go through those line by line and see what we're currently allowing. I think it's way too much. I think it's out of control. To Byron's point, we got to get this under control a little bit. So I think there is a medium in there, or happy medium in there that we can all agree on, and with Jennifer's help, and kind of knock that down and kind of do that. Maybe later on, if we want to eliminate it at a later time, we can revisit it after the comprehensive plan is complete. We can look at it and say, hey, this is where it's going to go, because we might not even be in the right locations. Now, some of them look like they are, but I think in the meantime, I think what we do is make it better, make it more selective, and just attract the businesses that we want and streamline it for those types of businesses. That's my 2 cents on that.
So do we want to take this one step at a time? And then I'll just say, I just personally, I feel like that any business wanting to come in here, I don't want to discourage business, but I think they all should follow the same procedures as the rest of the communities out there that come in, or the developers coming in. That's just my 2 cents there. Do we want to do this line by line, or do you want to do this all in one group? Gentlemen, I'm asking for your opinion on that.
Well, I'd like to finish discussing the other items. I've only had an opportunity to discuss the EDZ zone and the warranty on the trees or shrubbery or buffering.
Well, they said your time was up, so I don't.
My time's up.
No, I'm kidding. Why don't we just start at number one, start at the top, and let's just go down real quick. Was that okay with you?
It sure is.
Sir, is that okay with you? All right, so number one, elimination of the concept brief process. I'll kick it off with you.
Okay, so one of the reasons I'm actually in favor of removing the concept brief process, and the reason is, if you read page 13 of Article 3, Section G, it says it is our I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it says basically it's the commissioner's opportunity to raise reasonable concerns prior to a more formal application and before more detailed work and resources are committed beyond the initial concept stage. All great ideas, right, for the applicant, okay? At this stage of formal review, so it says it's a formal review, the applicant should be advised by Community and Development Services and/or the county commissioners of major issues of concern or interest. So what happens is, before they commit any more additional resources to the project, they want to know what our thoughts are. Okay? Now, what if we go into this meeting, we don't identify any concerns, or some concerns come up later, and they invest in this project? Could be engineering fees, could be, more technical studies. Now they've have a lot of time and money into this project, and they come back and we have a problem with it. That's one of my concerns. And well, why didn't you tell us? If that was one of your problems, why didn't you tell us about it? As far as I'm concerned, we're doing it as a courtesy. This is a courtesy to the applicant, not to the county. This is an extra step that the county commissioners are taking that we don't have to take. It's extra, as far as I'm concerned, extra risk and liability by not pointing something out if we don't point it out. So I just don't think there's any benefit to the county. I think it's an extra step. I would just go through the normal process and I would eliminate it.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Well, I've made my comments, but it certainly isn't a hill I'm going to die on. I got other issues here today.
Okay. Next item up is elimination of the EDZ. We've already talked about that. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Additional of an 18-month time frame for community meetings. The only comment I've got on that, 18 months seems to be like a very long time to me. I don't know if that's, I would agree with Commissioner Schroeder, and I'm sure Commissioner Buck would probably agree that there needs to be some kind of flexibility if it's 12 months or 18 months, but just to set the standard out there that you have up to 18 months, then I think we'll slowly get to where it's going to take 18 months to get through that. And I don't know that people, it's one of the biggest, we won't say the biggest, but it was a complaint that we heard, or I heard when we were out campaigning, is about how long it takes to get something approved in this county, residential or commercial business here. And mainly the commercial side of it was the biggest complaint. So if we're going to attract some commercial businesses in here, maybe we need to really think about that. Word it some way that it could take up to maybe 18 months, but not. Any thoughts? You got any thoughts about that?
Sure. I mean, you all could also have distinctions for different type of projects, right? So a 40-acre lot split, maybe you're less concerned about, how long it takes. Sometimes those get tied up, right, with water issues or road and bridge. Maybe there's only certain types of issues where you're more concerned about that. Another option would be for really massive projects, right, that do take a long time to go through the process. Maybe you want to require a second meeting. Maybe it's not a community meeting that as it's currently defined, right? Maybe it's some type of status update meeting is required, after 12 months or after 18 months to the community. Again, I want to be clear on my previous statements about this. I am fully in support of having the community involved in these projects, being aware and having their opportunity to speak about them. My concern was simply community meetings are designed to be at the beginning of the process, right before it starts, and that allows for applicants to make revisions to be responsive to what they hear. So I just wanted to clarify that, and so really, is it a community meeting at month 19? Maybe it's not a community meeting anymore, right? Maybe it's some other type of public engagement. Maybe you want to require that, maybe you don't. We also have the two-step public hearing process, and so I just want to be sure that we're clear on how we define that and what maybe any exceptions are, and then we're happy to do that.
Well, I would agree. We definitely need the community's input, so we don't want to exclude that. Back to my original statement, I think 18 months is a little long. So. Commissioner Buck?
Yeah, the reason this timeline came up was because of a specific development in the past, and it was Morstead. And the community meeting was over 2 years old, and EC East and EC West had been approved since the community meeting had taken place. So the citizens that attended that community meeting didn't have any knowledge of those two large developments being approved, catty-cornered to their development or to their house. And there was just so much had changed. And it just was so obvious that this 2 years, the whole world changed for that 1 mile radius or half-mile radius. That whole world changed. Traffic levels had changed, or predicted traffic levels, and all the housing units that were going to be built in that vicinity. So that whole thing had just dramatically changed. And to sit there and say, oh, well, that community meeting was so irrelevant, but we don't care, we're going to push this thing through anyway. I was on the planning commission at that time. I asked for a continuance, and I asked for a second community meeting, and it was denied, and it was approved anyway. So that's what brought this up to the forefront, because it was unfair to the citizens to just, there was no expiration. It could have been 5 years, it could have been 4 years, and it didn't matter. So there needs to be a timeline. There needs to be some rules put in place. I think 18 months is fair. I don't think it's too soon, and I don't think it's too long. 2 years is too long. Too many things change in the vicinity, and I think 12 months would be too short in some instances. I think 18 months, and they can ask for, let's say 18 months expire, they can say, hey, what do you guys think? Do we need to do a second community meeting? Tell them, yeah, they need to do a second community meeting based on, what's happening, or you can come back to us and waive it, I don't know. But we need to have something in place, and 18 months is a great start. And if it doesn't work, we change it later. But let's get something in place. That's my opinion on that one.
Commissioner Schroeder? Give it a second.
It has been brought up several times about where that should be. I do like the idea of having different requirements, length of time for different projects. Because I think the goal here is community awareness, but also an encouragement for the applicant to keep the process moving and to not just sit on something. So obviously some projects are going to take more time, they're going to have more referrals. We've had as many as 3 referral periods sometimes on some projects, and that extends the time. So I do like the idea of having some different amounts there based on the project. But I also like the idea of allowing CDS to make some judgment calls on whether or not this second community meeting would be necessary or not.
Commissioner? All right, next item up is item number 4, which is the addition of a 3-year landscape warranty period. So Commissioner Buck?
I expressed my opinion on that. I think it stands with the new Amendment 5 in the elimination of a annual or, yearly review.
Commissioner Schroeder?
Yeah, I have no more comments on that.
Okay. Gentlemen, do we want to vote on these things as one package, or do you want to do it individually?
Commissioners, don't forget this is a public hearing, and you do need to invite the public to speak if they should wish.
That's right, thank you. So, public comments?
Leave the list up there. Jim Marshall, 4091 East Chestnut Court, Greenwood Village, Colorado. The concept brief process is useful. Mike said it perfectly. It does benefit the developer primarily. We don't expect people to tell us what to do, but we do get good questions, and we do get from staff. We do work with staff to get things, get ideas, and make sure we're conforming to the regs properly. We're not looking for the commissioners in a concept brief to do anything maybe other than ask some questions. And they certainly aren't making decisions. We don't expect you to, and I would even be willing to sign some kind of document prior to that we're not taking any comments or questions. We're not using them. We're not going to hold them over your head. You know, I don't know how that gets drafted, Lance, but you could do something like that. I do like the concept brief process, though, because it does give us some things to think about. The elimination of the EDZ, I totally agree with everything you guys said. Mike, I'm totally in agreement with you said. There's definitely uses, commercial uses out here that you want to make sure they can get a fast track, but you need to identify them. I've developed in about 12 different jurisdictions over the years, and the really progressive ones do come out with an expedited process for desirable uses. And that's not Burn Co., which I wouldn't want to have next door to me. And when we start talking about toxic waste material and storage of that, let's go find another county. So I think you guys are on the right track. You don't want to eliminate the ability to fast track something that's really useful, that's really wanted, especially on the Highway 86 corridor or Singing Hills or a major arterial that runs through the county, even County Line Road down the road when it starts to become more traveled. So that's my thought on that. The 18-month time frame on community meetings, I agree. It's not a bad idea, but all I would suggest there, every project's different. Morstead was nothing short of a cluster for at least 3 or 4 years. That project was tied up in litigation, which is why it took so long. The plan didn't really ever change, but I think maybe if you give staff the discretion to determine whether an extension of the 18 months is applicable or not, and if they have concerns, maybe they bring it to the board and say, hey, we're not comfortable making a discretionary determination on extending the 18 months. Here's the facts. Let you guys decide. That might be another way to handle that. The 3-year landscape warranty period, not much to say other than that where municipalities do accept landscape improvements for long-term maintenance, the warranty period is usually 2 years.
All right, thank you, sir. Any other public comments?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Don Gray, 16,000 Highway 86. Obviously, my faces scenario with one word, which would be Excel, and I'm going to bring it into the forefront right here. The EDZ is, as of July, you use the EDZ as one of your points to Excel of not using the route that they've chose, because a lot of it is part of the EDZ zone. 3 different paragraphs within your resolution speak to the EDZ zone to help the county try to get Excel to move that route to a different position. If we eliminate the EDZ zone, I feel, from my point of view, we're giving Excel Public Service Company more ammunition. Now, if we give them that ammunition to move forward with it, if we eliminate it, they're going to come in immediately and those 3 paragraphs are going to be struck when you get into a lawsuit. They're going to say, well, it's no more applicable because you've taken them off the table. So my point would be to both Mike and Dallas, let's try to modify the EDZ zone if it needs to be worked at that process, but eliminating it at this point, from my personal standpoint, would be a bad move on the county's part and a bad move for the residents that are being affected by the XL project. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Lance, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Raising the EDZ zone is something we have done in the PUC challenge. It is something I will continue to argue as long as the zone does exist, and eliminating it entirely could have an impact on how XL responds to that aspect of our brief.
Good enough for me, thank you. Commissioner Schroeder, you got any questions, sir?
Just a couple final comments, and then I'll be done. The EDZ zone certainly can be improved on. Not going to argue that part. But we've discussed implementing a land use map for the entire county. And as I see it, this is the baby step to get to that entire land use map. And so I don't think we throw everything out if this is the direction that the board is wanting to go to create a county-wide land use map. This is the first baby step for that. Now, can we adjust what uses are there? Sure. Can we look at a different location? Sure. But to just throw it out and start over, I think is problematic from that point of view as well. If this is the direction we want to go in creating these maps, this is the first section of where we're at. I think with this discussion, there's some opportunity for us to improve upon this. Mr. Chair, I would move that we continue the discussion of these land use regulations changes to October 22nd of this year. That gives us enough time to work out some of these issues, and it also keeps us from pulling the rug out from our applicant on October 8th. So that'd be my motion to continue this to October 22nd.
All right, so we definitely don't want to do anything to, well, I'll just keep it quiet. We don't do anything to disrupt what we've got going on with Excel Energy. So there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I would second that with conditions that the only thing that is continued would be the EDZ zone discussion. I don't see why we couldn't vote on the concept brief, the time limit for the community meetings, and I don't think we need a vote for the fourth item for the landscape. So we could just hit those other couple of items and yay or nay now, in my opinion.
So Commissioner Schroeder, do you want to amend your motion?
My motion is to continue the entire resolution until the 22nd. There's no concept brief scheduled between now and then. I do think we need to have more discussion on giving discernment to staff that may be even shorter than the 18-month period. So I think that still is a discussion item and we need to have, and of course the EDZ. So my motion stands to continue the entire resolution to the 22nd.
So can I just make a comment, Dallas? I know I'm supposed to second or not second, but just as a comment, I would like to see, whether we continue or not, till October, but maybe the staff discretion becomes the board's discretion on the time limit. If it's 18 months and they need to go over 18 months, then they come to us and say, hey, should we grant them should they do a second community meeting, or this particular development or applicant, nothing's changed in the community, it's minor impact, do you guys want me to waive it? Something like that I would feel comfortable with. So this is further discussion.
So I guess if we're going to follow Robert's rule of order, so
Yeah, I know.
are you going to second or?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on this? Okay, I would just make a couple of comments for that as far as discussion, motion. And a second, I would like to see, when we come back, we can work on flexibility and outline it in a little bit more than just having this vague, open, floating deadline, you know what I'm saying? So to speak, but we can talk about that. But anyway, there's a motion, there's a second. All in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. All right,
Further discussion, please.
okay.
I'd like to kind of discuss the process moving forward. There is a lot of other, and Jennifer can help with this too, but there's a lot of other ideas floating out there for rule and regulation changes. So we all agree, I think we all agree, that our rule and regulations need some updating. They can be improved. But I'd like to see that process and kind of lay that out, how my two fellow commissioners would like to see that. Do we want to feed Jennifer the ideas? She's kind of the clearinghouse for that. Do we solicit ideas from the planning commission? Our ideas are fed to Jennifer. Jennifer's includes them in one of the planning commission meetings, and they can look at them in addition to their ideas. I just kind of want to flush that out a little bit, how you guys want to move forward. And I know you put in your budget, you said a rewrite for our rules and regulations. Can you kind of talk about how you would envision the plan forward?
Sure. Lance, did you have a question first?
It can wait, but I do have a question.
Sure, correct. I did include dollar request in the budget for essentially an overhaul, new regulations, hiring a consultant to do that, to do them top to bottom. As you all know, right, we've been doing some small changes here and there with in-house. It sounds like that there are ideas for maybe complete overhaul, especially following the comp plan and depending on the direction that that provides. And so I think a question for you all would be, if you approve funding for that in 2026, would be how would you best like to utilize the last quarter of 2025? Is that making some changes that you do want to see in the meantime? We can certainly do that. Is it starting the conversations to provide direction when we do have a consultant on board and starting that process? So I would ask, we can certainly do either of those. You're correct, Commissioner, we certainly do have an ongoing list of things. Some are pretty easy and some are very robust. And so there's a variety that needs to be tackled.
So for example, if we wanted to move forward with some ideas and suggestions, we could put together a list of suggestions, go through the planning commission, and bring them back for the continued meeting in late October. And instead of 4 items here, we might have 10 items.
We would not have time to notice additional, I'd have to look at the exact language on that and chat with Lance about if we could add additional items.
Well, or it could be not at that meeting, but it could be,
But
but it could be in
of course.
November, but it could be in November. But
course.
you're talking about the last quarter of 2025. If we have some common sense things that we think we want to discuss and kind of flush out a little bit, we could do that meeting in November sometime, or December.
Of course. I would suggest a work session as well. I think it could be really helpful to have dialogue, either 2 separate work sessions with the board and the planning commission, or combined, or you all could certainly provide that direction, and then we could wrap in the planning commission as step 2.
Yeah, that's what I was going to recommend, is that we do some of those meetings to help prioritize the list. The list is probably pretty extensive. We're not going to be able to tackle it all in one meeting. So we need to prioritize them as what is most important, and go from there. I know Commissioner Buck and I had talked earlier this week about taking another look at our 1041s. And to me, that one needs to be close to the top, if not the top one.
It does. I'm glad
going
you brought
forward.
that up, because I forgot about that.
And the sooner I think that we can make that happen, and the better. But it is important that we prioritize, and maybe there's a few little nuggets that are easy to do. Yes, there's no big deal. But some of these major things we need to be able to prioritize and get them on the schedule so that we can get it done.
Yeah, battery storage and solar regulations was one of those 1041 items that we wanted to kind of flesh out and discuss for sure.
Obviously, it's going to take more than one work session to do this. There's no way we can do it. And then we get our ducks in a row, and then we meet with the Plan Commission, would be my recommendation. And have a work session with the Planning Commission, if you gentlemen are in agreement with that. But let's have something, and then is to Commissioner Schroeder's comment, if there's low-hanging fruit that we can get a hold of and get that knocked out of the way, and I'm all for that too.
Commissioners, before we adjourn, and really related to this conversation, I was going to ask if you wanted to have a work session on what remains here between now and October 22nd. So, for example, there's discussion about considering eliminating some of the uses from the EDZ, but certainly not all. That is something that if you had a work session, we could probably make some pretty good progress on between now and the 22nd. I think that's probably manageable. Similar question with the 18-month time frame. Commissioner Buck, you raised a question, who should have discretion? If we're not going to lock in 18 months, if there's going to be some discretion, who should it be? There's a legal issue in there that we should probably discuss, but that's something that could be hammered out at a work session. What is the board all on the same page? So between now and the 22nd, is that something you'd like staff to get on your calendar?
I think it'd be great.
For the three remaining issues?
I think we have to, because we're going to go into that October meeting, and we're going to be exactly right where we are right
Yeah.
now.
Right,
if we-
that's
if we
what I
don't
was
do it.
thinking.
Yep. I agree.
And it would help staff, because at the end of the day, there's some logistical issues. Jennifer and I need to prepare a resolution that reflects any changes that are likely to be made, so that if the board does make a decision, we're prepared to put that in front of you, get that recorded, and get that published to complete the process. But we can't do it if we don't know what's coming. So
Agreed.
it sounds like a work session is appropriate. We will get that scheduled, and we'll try and address some of this then before we come back here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other comments or questions? You,
No,
sir? All right, with that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
So motion is second, time is 2:01 PM, we are adjourned. All in favor, I should say. All in favor? Aye. All right, we're